We should love that though. Mookie Betts and all those guys, Freddie Freeman, they signed there to win a World Series. So we should embrace that, and we should look at that and say, Michael Jordan, after winning his 4th or 5th championship, they were expected to win. And all the things that come with that, Kobe Bryant and all the greatest, the Tom Brady, time Tom Brady stepped on the field, it was like, all right, they're going to win a Super Bowl. I want us, that's my goal here, is to honestly bring that to LA. And I don't care what people say, like, oh, we bought it or we did that. It doesn't matter. Like the players that we went and acquired are phenomenal human beings as far as, and also players. Now they're great players on the field. Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, the guys that we got, they were on our wish list and we got all of them somehow. They are phenomenal people though. Like Yamamoto and Ohtani, I can't speak highly enough of.
That was Los Angeles Dodgers Senior Advisor to MLB and Player Development, Chris Woodward. Hello and welcome to episode 94 of the Irish Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Becker. Chris Woodward will be my guest on the show today. We tried something different with my conversation with Chris. First, you could see the full video of our talk on the Community Network website of the Irish American Baseball Society. That was available to dues-paying members of the IABS. Then, on June 3rd of 2024, I put the first part of our talk on episode 89 of the Irish Baseball Podcast. While I try to keep our conversations evergreen, baseball is an ever-changing and evolving game. Just keep that in mind when listening. Those situations are always minimal, but when guests reference games that happened, quote, last night, that might be a great anecdote for the conversation, even if you know that game wasn't actually occurring last night. Let's get things started with Chris Woodward. I've been really looking forward to this conversation, Chris, so thanks for being here.
Yeah, me as well. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Over the course of this podcast for over 3 years, almost 3.5 years now, I've talked to high school coaches, college coaches, people who are scouts, and a lot of what I don't think people understand is you can have the analytics, but what you need to do is explain to the players what those numbers are going to do for them. Because sometimes people are just like, here's your exit velo, and they don't tell the player what that means. And then the player is just trying to hit some number on a StatCast board. But what you want them to know is this is how it translates into the real game. And I feel like, just looking at it from the outside, just watching games on television, that's something that you can see in the Dodgers organization, is that not only do they know the numbers, but they know what they mean.
Yeah. And I think that's, that was something that, when I left and went to Texas, it was pretty eye-opening, the amount of players that weren't aware. Because I was coming from the Dodgers after the 18 season going to Texas. And the guys with the Dodgers, we had for 3 years basically educated them on a lot of these numbers and what we look to evaluate these players on. And I think it's really important, like when a player looks at a stat and they know what it means and they know how that affects them, or they know why we're evaluating that stat. Because we had a lot of guys that we actually platooned in LA before, the Jock Petersons and the Kike Hernandez, they would only play against right-handers or left-handers. And they didn't understand, like, why am I not getting an opportunity? And, I had to deal with that in Texas because guys they just thought they should be playing every day. It was like, well, if you can't hit a left-handed pitcher, what are we going to do about it? Here's the numbers that tell me when a ball comes from over here, you don't hit it very well. When it comes from over here, you hit it really well. So my question isn't to just sit him on the bench. My question is, okay, what are you going to do about the guy that throws with his left hand? Are you going to train differently? Are you going to think differently? Are you going to think about where you stand in the batter's box? How are we going to, what solution are we going to come up with? So when you have these numbers that kind of prove certain things, so let's say you can't hit breaking balls, or you can't hit high spin fastballs, or you can't hit sinkers, whatever. I think it's good to expose our players sometimes, because now they can maybe come up with a solution to counter that. And if they can't, and they try and they can't, maybe they become a platoon player. Maybe they become a guy that I have to match up better against. Same thing with pitchers. If a pitcher can't, get out righties, or he can't get out lefties, or he just struggles second time through or third time through the lineup, like we're going to present those facts to him and say, okay, you want me to keep you in the game in the fifth inning. Third time around, you struggle. Like the OPS goes way through the roof and your execution goes down. Like, do you need to be in better shape to be able to execute your pitches? Your velo goes down. All these things happen. Like, how are we going to fix that? And that's where I think, when we get creative and we talk with the player and we have dialogue and there's back and forth, it's not us telling the player, you have to do this, or you have to do this, or you're going to sit against this or that. Like, we present them options, and so they can come up with solutions so we can work together to try to figure it out. And I think that's, if we do that, at the end of the day, if I'm a manager, I have a responsibility to put the best team on the field for that night. And if I feel like you're not, I'm going to be honest with you and say, hey, Rick, I don't think you can hit this guy. You know what I mean? Like, this is a tough matchup for you. Obviously I'm gonna bat this guy, and it may hurt to hear that, but maybe that gives you a little motivation to go into cage and talk to the hitting coach and say, hey, I got to figure out how to hit this guys like this, because I don't want to sit the bench. I want to be in there every day. It takes a special guy to hit, obviously, to be able to play every day, but you can't dispute that when I present the facts to you.
So I think you did touch a nerve when you talked about a pitcher going beyond the fifth inning and going that third time through the order, because that's obviously a very controversial topic now. When you are developing a player and they are coming up through the minors, how do you balance them getting rocked every once in a while with seeing if you can extend them? Once you get to the majors, you can't risk it anymore. Like, I got to pull you if I don't think you're doing well in the third time through the order, but you have a little bit more of a leash in the minor leagues. Do you try to stretch them out more down there so that you know what you're getting when you get up to the big leagues, and you know that you can show them these numbers and say, look, you just struggle when you try to do this?
That's a great question. And that's a question I ask a lot, especially with our organization, because we tend to keep guys short in their minor league starts. I think that's more due to health regard, to keep them healthy, to keep their, obviously with the number of Tommy John and shoulder and elbow issues, there's been a ton throughout baseball, and we're trying to limit that as much as possible, trying to get them healthy through the beginning of their career. But I agree with you. I honestly agree. I had a player, Lance Lynn, in Texas, who was, similar to Nolan Ryan-esque, where he's just built different. He's a big burly kid, like, can throw. I remember throwing him over 115 pitches, basically like 4 or 5 starts in a row. And that was kind of unheard of. When I started managing, luckily I had him, but the other guys I didn't do that with, because I knew like this guy would actually get better when it came to like pitch 90 to 100. He'd start throwing 97, 98. And it was like, wait a second, he's pulling something out of his back pocket that, he's got another gear. Whereas other guys, you get around the 85 pitch mark, their stuff would start slowing down quite a bit. Their execution, their velo, everything's going down. They're going to get hit. Like, we know that. Not only have they seen him a couple of times before that, but now his stuff is way less than it was at the start of the game. So you're talking about a hitter who's seeing the guy for the third time. It's a much lesser version of the pitcher he saw from the beginning of the game. He's going to get hit. And now we have, 2 or 3 bullpen guys, as long as we have guys down there that have fresh arms that are throwing 95 to 100. Why would we ever, make that? So like I said, if there's 45 balls in those, 45 slots out of 50 that are black, I'm going to bet black. So it's like, that's why it's hard for managers nowadays to kind of keep guys out there, because at the old school idea of like, hey, let's get this guy through 6 or 7 innings, like it doesn't make sense as far as like, we're trying to win a game. But I do agree on the development side. Sometimes we have to recognize some guys are different. And when guys are different, I think we should push them a little bit to see how different they really are. Because imagine if Nolan Ryan pitched today, we might never know if Nolan Ryan could actually go past 115 pitches. I don't think 250 pitches like he threw sometimes was right. But I do think, he was a guy that could throw 110, no problem. And he would actually get stronger based on, his history and how hard he threw. So I would hate to see that not happen. I'd hate for us not to witness a guy like, Nolan Ryan or Lance Lynn or somebody that's built that way, where, Roy Halladay, who can throw complete games and throw 115 pitches and actually get better as the game went on.
So a lot is made of the big market nature of the Dodgers. And I think a lot of people look at, okay, maybe there's a problem and they can throw a little money around to try to solve that problem on the field. But I think that comes with some other disadvantages. If you look at a team like the Rays, who don't have that money, but they seem to find a way to slot somebody in whenever they need. So they just seem to have somebody coming up through the system, and the expectations that come with having that big market presence and having that amount of money. And you look at the Rays and people will glow about their front office, and they still haven't won a World Series. The Dodgers have a World Series in 2020, but people look at the budget and then maybe are a little more critical. So does that big market nature come with a lot more pressure throughout the organization?
Yeah, it does. And I think that we all kind of embrace that. But yes, I think your point is really valid. Like, you look at the Rays and everybody's kind of, looks at the Rays and go, wow, like, how do they do it? Now it's pretty risky sometimes, obviously, running that. Now they have no choice maybe with their budget. They can't afford to go out and spend, hundreds of millions of dollars, like we did this offseason to fill their needs. But they still end up, developing players, and they're very similar. Obviously, Andrew Friedman came from the Rays. He set that system up in Tampa, and he ran that system and, that organization very, very well. And they obviously got to a World Series while he was there. It just presents the problem of like winning all of it consistently. And you see that. You see they just have a hard time getting into the playoffs, getting past the playoffs. They win 95 to 100 games almost every year. It seems like the Rays, which staggers you because you're like, some of these names you never even heard of, but they get the most out of their players, which is awesome. Now for us, we have expectations. Maybe the Rays have built more expectations because they just win every year. And I think that kind of permeates throughout the organization. They're like, no, we're going to win because that's what we do. Whereas the Dodgers, yeah, there's more pressure. We should love that though. Mookie Betts and all those guys, Freddie Freeman, they signed there to win a World Series. So we should embrace that, and we should look at that and say, Michael Jordan, after winning his 4th or 5th championship, they were expected to win. And all the things that come with that, Kobe Bryant's and all the greatest, the Tom Brady, time Tom Brady stepped on the field, it was like, all right, they're going to win a Super Bowl. I want us, that's my goal here, is to honestly bring that to LA. And I don't care what people say, like, oh, we bought it or we did that. Doesn't matter. Like the players that we went and acquired are phenomenal human beings as far as, and also players. Now they're great players on the field. Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, the guys that we got, they were on our wish list and we got all of them somehow. They're phenomenal people though. Like Yamamoto and Ohtani, I can't speak highly enough of. I mean, they're just phenomenal teammates. They work their butts off. I mean, they're in there every day grinding, trying to be the best player they can be. Glasnow's the same way. Guys like Jason Hayward, Freddie is the best base runner, one of the best base runners in the game. Like, this guy cares about every detail. Mookie's phenomenal the way he just, no challenge is too big for him. So we just got to put that all together and come together as a group. And I think if we do that, we will be a wrecking ball. It will be tough to beat, but we got to do it. It's not going to be easy. And I think that's something we have to embrace. Like, nobody can buy a World Series. Nobody can buy a championship. We have to go out and prove it on the field between the lines. And I think that we have the right group to do it, but we still got a long way to go. We still got to come together as a team and continue to play well.
And you can talk about Michael Jordan winning championships, and I'm old enough to remember there was a time when people talked about Michael Jordan like, he was a player who couldn't win the big game, who couldn't win the big playoff series. But then you put a winning coach at the end of the bench and you put some good supporting guys around him, and all of a sudden it's 6 NBA titles in 8 years or whatever it ended up being for them. So I think that's a good point when you talk about the way the Dodgers lineup is constructed, the way that roster is constructed. Yeah, they're the big names and they're the big free agents, and you can go out and spend $1 billion in the offseason, but sometimes it's that 6, 7, 8, 9 hitter who comes through to win you the game that week. And you can't go out and have the luxury of signing an extension with Mookie Betts or an extension with Will Smith if you don't have those guys in the back of the order who are also going to produce. So I think people tend to look at the superstars and not see that a lot of teams have superstars, right? Shohei Ohtani was on a team for a few years with the best player in the game, and they didn't always win. So sometimes it's a lot more about the entire 25-man roster than it is just about the top of the order.
Yeah, and I think that's where we separate ourselves. Honestly, like we have obviously some of the best top tier players, like you said, as far as superstars go. But that's where our player development system comes through. I mean, last year what I saw, for us to win 100 and some games last year, I mean, we had so many injuries. Our pitching staff was depleted, but we had 5 or 6 guys that came up from AAA. Some of them came up from AA that I saw early in the season. A guy like Emmett Sheehan came up and did really well. Kyle Hurt came up and did really well. Gavin Stone, Michael Grove, and you're seeing these guys on our roster now. And that's where I think we separate ourselves. The Gavin Lux, the Michael Bush last year. We have so much depth in our system, and that comes from we have so many guys ready. Andy Pages is probably going to end up being in the big leagues this year. He had a phenomenal spring, but he would have made every other major league team. Honestly, with the spring training he had, he would have made every other spring training, any other team in the big leagues. And he didn't make our roster, but he knows he'll be ready. If something happens, he'll be one of the first guys called up to help us out. And when these guys come up, the reason why we had so many rookie of the years throughout this organization is because when they come up, they're comfortable. They know what to do. They kind of know the system. They come up and they're just expected to be part of the machine, basically. And they step right in. When Cody Bellinger got called up in 17, he ends up hitting 39 home runs. Chris Taylor got called up that year, had been up and down a little bit with Seattle. He comes up and is one of our best players. So it's, Max Muncy, the same story. These stories continue to happen. And there's a reason why. They come here, like I said, they're expected to get better. They expect to get better. We make them improvements in some way, and they come up and they perform well for us at the big league level. So that's always kept us sustainable. But it's so huge to have those guys. Last night, it won the game for us. Our 7, 8, 9 hitters, got some huge hits for us late in the game, and we ended up beating the Giants last night.
So one more thing before I let you go. This is the Irish American Baseball Society, the Irish Baseball Podcast. And we're obviously having you on because you have some sense of pride in your Irish heritage. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? First of all, what your Irish heritage looks like, because I'm finding as I interview more people, it looks a little different for everybody. Sometimes we have last names that don't make it sound like we're Irish, but we still have a lot of that background. And also how your heritage sort of helps you and what characteristics from being Irish and from your Irish family have helped you get to the point where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'm kind of a mutt from all over, but I definitely have. I know on my mom's side, my grandfather, was part Irish, and I know that's the European history. Just being from across the sea. I've never been there, and it kills me. My wife is actually, Scottish. Her dad was, off the boat from Scotland. So we definitely, as a family, have a lot of, Britain or UK pride in our blood. So we love the opportunity to come on here and obviously share baseball. I didn't even know until a couple friends of mine got me in touch with you guys, and I didn't realize baseball was actually I know there's other sports and soccer and different sports in Europe that are a little more popular than baseball, but it just makes my heart happy, honestly, to hear that baseball is being talked about and being loved across the sea, and would love to help promote it and help in any way. But that background is obviously important to me, and I want to carry that pride on from the people that were before me.
Chris Woodward, thank you so much. This was an incredible conversation. I love talking baseball, especially a well-run organization like the Dodgers. Those things just really, really interest me. And like I said, there are a few others. This isn't like me coming out here and being like a Dodger fan or anything. I'm just saying that you look sometimes at how teams are run, and you guys are doing it the right way. And I always love to hear people talk about just doing things the right way. So thanks for being here. It really means a lot to us.
I appreciate it. Love. Yeah, same here, man. I love talking baseball, and really good questions. I love it.
I'm Rick Becker, and my guest on the show today was Chris Woodward, the Los Angeles Dodgers senior advisor to MLB and player development. To hear the first part of my conversation with Chris from episode 89 on June 3rd of 2024, or to hear any past episodes of the show, go to irishbaseball.org. This has been episode 94 of the Irish Baseball Podcast.